Did you know that even if you locked your interest rate, the payment for your house could still go up? We're going to talk about that next.
So even with a fixed interest rate, not a variable, but a fixed interest rate, the mortgage payments for almost everybody are going to go up. So let's talk about what's the reason behind that. So there's 4 parts to a mortgage. Ready? You have, and we call it the PITI.
Yes.
PITI, principal, interest, tax, and insurance.
Yes.
So truthfully, if you have a fixed interest rate, when you close your mortgage, the amount of money you borrow, or the principal, and the annual interest rate is going to be fixed. That doesn't change. What does change is the tax variability as well as the insurance costs, right? So let's talk about one more piece of this that matters, and that's called escrow.
Right.
Almost all buyers, when they close on their mortgage loan, when they get all the lender papers, what the lender does is open an escrow account or a trust account. And so what happens is every time you make a monthly mortgage payment, a portion of that goes to the principal to pay the house off. A portion of it goes to the interest based on the rate. And then a portion of it goes to set aside 1/12 or one month out of the year's worth of property taxes, as well as 1/12 of the home insurance. So that's your escrow account. So every time you make a mortgage payment, you should be paying the predetermined amount of the principal as well as the predetermined amount of interest, as well as whatever the current tax rate and insurance rate, 1/12 of those, okay? So why would those change?
You would think it would be stable.
You would think it would be stable. It doesn't work that way. A couple of reasons. First of all, so why would the tax change? Here's the reason why the tax potentially could change. Is number one, if you bought the house and the person you bought it from, the seller, had owned that home for maybe 10 or 12 or 15 years, or even at this point 5 years, the value of that home increased significantly over that time, but their tax rate probably didn't change that much because the value of the home is not realized until you sell it. That's when the value is realized. And so what happens is whenever there's a sale, what typically comes in, or what typically happens, is the county tax appraiser comes in and assesses the current value of that home, which for all intents and purposes is what the buyer paid for that home. So a lot of times in that first year, when the tax season starts after the first purchase, the tax rates will go up quite a bit.
And it usually kind of follows too, like it doesn't happen immediately. So sometimes those numbers come in a few months later, which can be kind of shocking to buyers after they've purchased their home, like not expecting it. So that's why we wanted to talk about it.
That's right. So in talking about property tax, what can you do if you feel like the assessed value or the tax value is incorrect? You can actually go down to the county courthouse, and there is, certainly here in Alabama, there is a process in place. If you feel like that the tax assessor was wrong about your property, you can go down and actually protest that. That may not be a great word to use. You can go down and appeal. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get out of your property tax, but what it does mean is the county will take a second look at the value of your home. But don't be surprised after that first year if your property taxes go up a little bit. Secondly, with your home insurance. A lot of buyers find this out. Now, typically, insurance companies, so as you're going through the closing process in that 3 or 4 weeks that it takes to close, you'll get an insurance agent that you're going to use. He will send the actual quote to the attorney. So on the day of closing, the escrow amount is pretty accurate. That is your first year of insurance. And it's anticipated that when they calculate the amount of your monthly mortgage, it's going to be the same insurance cost year after year after year. But in reality, what happens if you have claims, storms, or just as the cost of everything goes up, insurance companies do adjust their rates like every other industry. And so what happens is over time, you can have a slow creep of the amount of annual insurance. And then as that goes up, then your monthly mortgage is going to go up as well.
Which also just, as you're talking about insurance, as a buyer, a consumer, that's something too you want to weigh, because if you do make a lot of claims, there's potential for your insurance to go up. So if it's a smaller thing that's happened to the house, like, can I just pay for that out of pocket and handle it without filing a claim, as opposed to filing it and then potentially paying a penalty for that later on?
Yeah, so here's a great example. And we hear about this a lot. We ran into it a few years ago. And so, for example, let's assume that you develop a roof leak, but not your whole roof is shot, but maybe next to a chimney or something, which happens a lot. Maybe there's a small leak that develops there. You can file that on your insurance, right? But it might be the cost of that leak is less than your deductible, or it might be the cost of that leak is small. The cost of the repair is small enough that you don't want to think about your insurance premiums going up. And so every time something happens, you as a consumer, you want to weigh those out. And certainly we're not here to advise you. We're not insurance agents, right? We're not attorneys. But just common sense wise, you weigh out the cost of repair versus the short-term and the long-term costs of filing that claim. So whether it's your property taxes that have been adjusted over time to reflect the accurate value of your home, or whether it is your insurance rates that over time, like every other industry, will most likely increase. What happens is that your escrow was set up initially at your closing at the previous rates. Now that there's new higher rates, there's a gap, and somehow you got to make the gap up. So what typically happens is two things. Number one, the lender that's holding the escrow account will ask you for a quick gap. In most cases, that might just be a couple of $100 or $500. It can be a lot of different things, but in most cases, they will ask for a one-time payment to catch that escrow up. And then after that, they'll adjust your monthly so that every year you don't have to pay that gap. So that that account truly reflects what the actual insurance costs and the actual tax costs should be at the end of the year.
And it doesn't, the point of this conversation wasn't to say those things are bad. It is just part of doing business in real estate. And so, but what we wanted to do was to make sure that you guys are prepared ahead of time for those things. And that's what we do as realtors. We don't want anything coming up and blindsiding you so that you don't know what to expect and when to expect it. So that's what we're here for. So if you have any questions about real estate in Birmingham, Alabama, reach out to us. We are Mike and Brandy Brown with Keller Williams in Birmingham, Alabama. You can reach us by phone at 205-368-5995, or you can email us at info@mbrownrealty.com.